Three, two, one, action. What's happening, everybody? This is your boy, Zach Evnesh, with my boy, AJ Roberts, longtime friend. We have been friends, even been business partners, done a lot of stuff together for a long time. I've seen the evolution of AJ from days of when he was managing an old school powerlifting website. I think it was like Iron Gladiators, right? Something like that. Yes, I remember you were got me to get sent, like you were reselling some of my DVDs. That's how long ago it was. We were actually selling DVDs and physical books. AJ's
that sled one that you like
yeah,
in the heat, that was dying.
yeah, have a sled. I think they sell that DVD on Elite FTS that was filmed. I remember every time I tend to do like a DVD or book, it tends to be around 100 degrees. But at that day in particular, I remember I left my wallet at home, and I remember telling the camera guy, dude, let me go and like run to the Quick Check Fast, get some Gatorades, because I'm dying. I go into my car, I was like, oh shit, we got to turn this up, brother. I'm going to have to stay tough with this. I mean, I've been with you, friends. You were living, I think, out in Idaho. You were a strength coach. You were interning at the university. You move to Westside Barbell, you go and break world records in powerlifting. And while you were doing that, you were involved in a lot of business consulting, business partnerships, where you were basically, as I like to, some people say the behind the scenes guy, but you were kind of the brains behind many operations, not just in fitness, but also, people don't know this, and sometimes you and I forget to talk about this, but behind multi-million dollar internet product launches, like pretty amazing how you've really been at the top in both powerlifting and business, and but you're still out there hustling and attacking. You're like always evolving, which I think keeps you going. Now you live out in California. You've been there a couple of years, so let's we've got training questions, we got business questions. Let's go back to your younger years. This was in Idaho when you and I first started talking?
Yeah, I was going to school at the University of Idaho, getting my bachelor's in sports science, emphasis in coaching. I started out trying to get a physical education degree.
Yes.
And then I got told I had to have some other degree too in my senior year. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. And then they were like, well, no one hires for physical education and all this. So I switched over and finished with sports science. But I had been powerlifting at that point and traveling to train with Brent Meisker, who owned Iron Gladiators, what you mentioned earlier. And he lived about an hour and a half away. And the strength coach from WSU used to drive up on Wednesdays and Saturday mornings. I just said, hey, man, can I hitch a ride? And so I started hitching a ride and going up there and training with them. And you would love this, Zach. I wasn't allowed to train in the same, like they had a monolift, and I wasn't allowed to train in the monolift. I had to train in the rack, and I had to walk my weights out, and I had to get strong before they let me go train.
Earn it.
So they would train, and I would run the rack and load the plates and that, and then they would come over, and I would work up to my measly, 4 plates at that time. And some people I understand. Some people might think 400 is a lot, but for me, I did that 400 pounds in high school, and then these guys were routinely working up to 1,000 plus. And so for me, it was like I said, they would go for an hour or so to get their work in, and 15 minutes I was done. But that was really where I got to like really learn about teamwork and camaraderie, and how powerlifting was an individual sport. But it also traveling up and back, I had I was lucky enough to have conversations with Matt Ludwig, who was the strength coach at WSU now. I'm not sure where he is, maybe Washington University, but like we would have a lot of conversations, and I'd get to ask questions. And a lot of people maybe say, oh, you talk too much or something, but like I was always asking questions because I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to learn, and from doing that, from being around Brent, who was a world record holder, from getting that time, 3 hours in a car with a strength coach, Division I strength coach, I was able to just, anything that didn't make sense, I could ask questions, and I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to absorb as much information as I could. And, it really kind of sped up my learning process because I had these mentors there, as well as getting the weight room experience. So, I was getting to understand where the programming was come from and how they put it together and all these things. And that's such valuable information. And then you get to see, how different, because we were training at different, like a gym, like a regular gym, and I was working in the weight room, and then we had the college campus gym, and I got to see different environments and see what I liked and what I was a part of. And so, outside of that, college probably, for me was pretty much a waste of time. I didn't party, I didn't drink, and I was in a committed relationship. So, most people, what they go to college for, I wasn't there for that. But in terms of the education, not what I paid for, but outside of that, I got an amazing education. And then, through that, I got to meet guys like you through the sport. From I think it was the Ryan Lee event is where we officially met. But, that was kind of all came through just that education, because I heard about guys. I actually heard about Eric Cressy and then reached out to him because he was a powerlifter. Met him in Vegas, and then he invited me out to Ryan Lee's boot camp. So that was kind of the entry point into all of that. And then when I realized, like, oh crap, you can actually make money doing this, like, because a lot of strength coaches like are dead broke, and they do it because they love it and they're passionate about it. But I just, like, at the time, it just didn't make sense to me. It's like, well, like, they're so good at what they do, and they Division I levels, but the guys have like that massive debt from school and stuff like that. And so when I went to the Ryan Lee thing, in terms of that mindset, it was like, okay, like you can be in strength and conditioning, you can be, in fitness, and you can make an income as well. And, you don't have to be broke. And so a lot of the stereotypes that I had formed around strength and conditioning and stuff kind of got shattered. And, from there, it just kind of has gone on and grown.
You were always, the one thing that's interesting is like you were just an aggressive learner, where when we met, you were kind of like, that Ryan Lee event was like, we're all kind of thrusted into this world of, there's experts in training, and that's how they kind of marketed themselves, by putting out content. Then there was a couple of people that were experts in understanding how marketing, how businesses can be run, how they can grow. And you didn't have that knowledge, but you went right to studying the experts in the field of growing businesses. And then I remember in like no time, you and I are having discussions of like, listen, you need to change your website and do this. And then you started managing a chain of gyms, I remember, or like it was like a large chain gym that some of our friends owned. Then you went on to managing kind of like the back end of how their marketing, their internet business worked, plus their masterminds. And it's like you just kept studying. And what's interesting is, the learning and the studying, that shit takes time, And what I saw was you were not in a position where you were like starving, where you had to learn it. But I know people that are in positions where they've got a family to support, they've got, rent to pay, they're not making money, and they're still refusing to learn how to run a business, to learn how to produce greater results. I mean, they're not even, I always say, good enough is the death of greatness. And that's why I'm always learning. Like this week, this week I have a mastermind. Next week I'm going to go through Lee Taft's speed and agility certification, and all my coaches are. But I know coaches, they're like, it's like they're on the deathbed of business and they're still not attacking. You had that instilled in you somehow, some way. And I recall the conversation of you being like, man, I think I want to like do this powerlifting thing. And we spoke about Westside Barbell, and I remember you moved there, and I was like, damn, I can't believe you did that. And you're like, yeah, motherfucker, you said I should.
That's one of the things, like if you go back and you look and I kind of, you don't really know when you're doing it, what you're doing, but as you look back, you kind of see the patterns, and then you say, oh, these are pretty normal patterns. So one of the things, it's always about changing your environment and being around the right people, right? And so, like I said, like I was I moved from England to America because growing up I played basketball, and it was like if I wanted to be a basketball player, you got to go to America. Like
yep.
That's the path. So that means like, at 16, I left my entire family. I didn't think anything of it because I was, this is what I have to do. Then when I was traveling in college, it was like, these are the powerlifters. I got to train with powerlifters. And so it didn't seem like anything to me. When I moved to Kentucky before Westside,
yes.
I was running the health club. I was driving 4 hours to Westside on a Friday and 4 hours back, and I set my whole schedule up so I was able to do that. and I didn't think anything of it. I was getting to go train at the best gym in the world. And, finally Louie said, just move here, you're crazy, So I up and moved and made that work. And I think that a lot of people that they're scared, like they won't even travel across the town to train at the best gym.
True.
And like you said, like one of the things I was always hungry to learn, and then I would learn from one guy, and then I'd hear them mention someone else. And that would trigger, 10 more purchases of books,
yes,
other certifications, and then you can finally go back and you're studying stuff. Like you'd love to get the old manuals and stuff like that. It's because, training principles, business principles, they've been seeded, from the 60s, the 70s. Like that's some of the best stuff because it was before the marketing hype came in. It was before they had to be different than everybody and have an angle and a hook and all these things. And you get a hold of that, and I just love to learn because I get to continually grow, and I feel like I'm growing. I feel like I can serve better, and that was really the passion behind that. The passion behind most successful people I meet as trainers, and what I see in you and our other friends that we know at the very high level is that like their passion to help others. That's why they're such learners, and why we invest in certificate. Like a lot of people would be like, why, I love Lee Taft, but we've known Lee for a long time, and he's got DVD. Why are you going to certification? Because if you learn one thing that helps you help someone else, it's worth doing. And that's what it is. Like, it's transforming more people. And you can't do that if you don't. I just spoke about this on the Barbell Business podcast. Like, you got to be a professional. Like, you've
turning pro.
People, you've chosen to help people. You got to step up. You can't take it lightly anymore. You're gonna do that. You gotta do it properly. Not just for your family, but for those people that are coming in front of you. And that's what I see the people that are successful. Yes, they have business practices and principles, and they follow fundamentals. But at the end of the day, it's that passion. And I see people. There's so many roads to be successful.
Right.
It's the passion that is in everyone, right? It's just that every day willing to do what it takes because they know that it gets them one step closer and one step closer. And it's just a never-ending journey, but it's so much fun when you go all in, and you're not just putting your toes in the water.
Yeah, and you're right. The passion is what drives. It's what drives me, and I'm really just saying that's what drives anybody who's so successful. And then you get to that point where you're like, I have to keep getting better because that's the only way I could really change lives. And then, Louie has his West Side podcast, and every podcast kind of circles back to, he keeps saying, coaches, you owe it to your athletes. Like, if you really going to be a coach, like, you got to get better. You cannot say that, I didn't do that, and that's why I've never done that. Well, I never drove a car until it was time to get the permit. You know what I'm saying? I always use that equation. I go, if that's the case, then, keep riding your big wheel, or I never learned this, so don't do that. So you've got to, keep that push. And yeah, I remember you doing that commute. Because I remember the first time I actually went to West Side, I met you there. Actually, it was, I met you there. And then that drive to Louisville, I went out to the business seminar. And that was a 4-hour trip. And when I did that trip, I was like, holy crap, this is what AJ's doing every weekend. But it's shocking, but then it's not shocking because you say, when you want to just crush it, that's what you do. And even a buddy of mine, I actually trained his son years ago, and then they moved up, goes to a private school up in North Jersey. And he goes, Zach, the commitment level up here of the parents compared to the commitment level where you are, he goes, it's 100 times greater. He goes, that one kid at your gym who's always showing up early, staying after late? He's like, we got 100 kids like that, and the parents are all in. And he goes, that is the difference maker. He's like, the coaches up here, it's not that they're better. He goes, the parents, they're all in. And that's just straight up the ticket, being all in. As you know, you've always kind of never said, I'm just going to take it slow. Boom. You're like, I'm going to West Side. I remember you saying, like, I'm going to set the world record in powerlifting. And with
I said it actually.
Yeah.
So I got a tattoo when I was 18, and I'd done like one powerlifting competition. And the guy who was tattooing me, BJ from the UK, he's tattooing me, and he's asking about this powerlifting stuff. I said, one day I'm going to be a world record holder. And in his head, he was kind of like, "Oh yeah, this is just a kid."
Yep.
And then when I broke the world record, he messaged me. He's like, "Man, you actually did it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah. Like, why would I say it if I didn't?" And I think that most people don't realize, and there is genetics to stuff, and there is predisposition and stuff
Sure.
like that. But like there is always that person that beats the odds that doesn't have that. And they just have perseverance.
Absolutely.
They have commitment and dedication, and they're willing. And I think that this is something that probably not a lot of people realize. Like, and we talk a lot about this. Is like it's not fun every day.
True. True.
When I was training at Westside, it wasn't fun. Like, I could barely get out of bed some mornings, had health issues, but it was like, that was what I did. And as you showed up and you trained and you put the work in, and, a lot of days in business, the days of just doing shitty stuff that has to get done, like no one likes tax season. No one
That's right.
You just hate. So it's like, but it's not about today or tomorrow. It's about what are we building and how do we build that and who are we helping. And as long as you know that end goal, like you might never reach end goal, you might reach it and reset a higher goal, but like it's funny enough, it is about the destination and what we're doing, because that's what fuels the journey, right? And in those moments that do suck, there's appreciation because you know that they're giving you those life lessons that you wouldn't get unless you were in the moment, going through it, processing, having to figure that shit out. And that's why I love training, because like while you're training, it's like a form of meditation. It's like a sanctuary. It's like a place where you escape the world and get to process it. And you're battling the weights or whatever, but you're pushing your body, you're testing yourself, you're going to places that you wouldn't go to on a normal basis. And that's what powerlifting provided me with. I know a lot of people who do CrossFit or SEAL Fit or any of these, adventure race stuff now that's really popular. Sure, like the wrestlers you work with, like the thing is you're pushing yourself beyond your limits, and that's actually where you get to know yourself the best,
When people ask me what's the advice you would give yourself when you were in your teens or early 20s, I always say believe. Like I didn't believe in myself. So hearing you at 18 saying I'm going to be world record holder, you could train as hard as you want, and same thing in business. You could do all these things, but if you don't believe in your mission, if you don't believe in this thing that you're trying to do is going to change lives, then you're going to bail out when the going gets tough. And your story of, the tattoo artist saying, hey, you're going to be a world record holder, real funny. I'm reading this book called Wrestling Tough, and they're talking about mostly wrestlers, but they make mention of like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and they talk about this one wrestler who went to Iowa, and then he went on to be multiple-time world champion, Olympic champion. Said like he got into a fight out on the playground in like junior high or elementary school. He was a young kid. He wasn't even in high school. He was like 11 years old, and he like beats up a kid because he had told these kids that he's going to win an Olympic gold medal in wrestling. Gets out to the playground. They make fun of him, and he beats them up. And they said like he was crying. He was devastated that somebody would say, no, that belief takes time. It's like the building of muscle. It took me time to believe in myself, whether it's training, whether it's business. And some people like yourself, you had it early. You leave the country at age 16. That's a gutsy, very ballsy thing to do, to, leave your whole family, not just to go somewhere somewhat far away, but to leave the country. It's, you're always pushing these limits. Seems like that's kind of your journey is you conquer one thing, you go on to the other. I guess without that end goal, right? You're like dead, aren't you, essentially?
Yeah, I look at it like this. It's kind of like, if I'm not playing all out,
yep,
then what am I doing?
Exactly.
And I kind of, people talk about zombies and The Walking Dead and stuff like that. And I'm like, look around. That's the world. Like, the world is a living dead. Like, they do the same thing every single day. They don't enjoy life. They literally look at the cell phone nonstop. And I just think that, like, that's not what life's supposed to be. Now, I don't know, if I've got it right, but what I do know is I get to do some amazing things, and I get to help a lot of people, and I do that by just committing and going all in. And it's not like it's easy. It's not like there's not struggles. It's not like I don't have my own personal battles and go through different things and ups and downs. but it's just that, like, okay, well, I'm here for something bigger than me, and so, like, every time I want to retreat or pull back, it's like I can't, it's like I can't do that, like, because I'll just be waiting to die, but I'll already be dead, and that's how I look at it. And I think that for most people, they have this calling, they know they're supposed to do something bigger than themselves, and I always say this, because I don't have any children yet, but I got a lot of friends who are starting to have kids and stuff like that. And what I notice is it's the first time in their life they realize that life is not about them.
Yes.
And so they become the best parents ever. But the truly great in this world, what I see, is they realize that their life's not about them. It's about humanity, right? And so they look at everyone as their family, and they care a lot. And they truly, generally care a lot about helping other people, and especially in our industry. More than anything, and you see someone you're walking down the street, you see someone who's unhealthy, and your heart hurts. You're in the grocery store and you see someone's cart loaded up with box foods, and and you look at them and you look at the kids, and the kids are overweight, and you like genuinely feel for that person, and that's what drives you, because it's like, these people don't know what they don't know, and they probably have no clue that the smart choice and the fat-free and all of that is not helping, and it's like that's what you wake up for, and that's why you've got that awareness. And if anyone's listening to this podcast, they're already taking more steps than most people, because they're continually learning, continually evolving and growing. Therefore, you already know that you're supposed to be doing something bigger. You already know that that's your thing, and it's not about figuring out exactly what that is, because I think you continuously evolve and that changes.
Sure. Yep.
It's just about, it's like, okay, I know I'm for something bigger, so I'm not going to settle for normal. I'm not gonna be average, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to push and go up. And whether that's like being the best person at your job that you work at, and showing up with a smile every day, and coming in early, staying late, working the hardest, and even if you're bagging groceries, like, you can be the best grocery bagger ever, and make a difference in people's lives, because making people smile and helping them and doing stuff like that, like, it's gonna have an impact. And so no matter what it is you do, you can play at a bigger level, and that's how I try to remind myself, on a daily basis.
It's so when we talk at this level of like being the best grocery bagger, sometimes I say to myself, well, shit, everybody that needs to be listening to this isn't. They're already like, fuck that, fuck those guys. I'm good enough. And what did I say earlier? Good enough is the death of greatness. So I think, this world has kind of like, it sucks. As a coach, I want every kid to be awesome, but there's only room for one guy to be the world record holder at the super heavies or at whatever weight class. There's not 10 ties, you know what I mean? Not 10 people can't share the gold medal podium. And I guess, like, I always say to myself to try to, like, calm my brain, because being passionate it's a double-edged sword. You're passionate, so you're doing good things, but then it's very hard to, Gary Vaynerchuk always says, hey, man, the reason why I'm always happy is because I got zero expectations. But I'm like, man, I know that kid could be better if his parents supported. Or I know this coach could have a better life if he took action, and then he could take care of his wife and kids better. But he don't want to do that. And it's like, so being sometimes passionate has that double-edged sword. But like you said, your other option is you're what I call a clock puncher. You're a zombie. You don't give a shit. And I mean, I can't go to the grave that way, and I can't let my kids see me. I just can't let them see me being that way. So the moral is there is like, you don't got to like it. You just got to do it. And I want to kind of get into, when you were living in Louisville, then you moved to Ohio, right? I want to kind of backtrack of, so you started managing a fitness business, the back end from Ohio. So you were working remotely, and your day would start. You did kind of the mornings, and then I think you went back in the afternoons at Westside, right?
Yeah. So we train at 8. So I'd get there at 8. Some days you have to shovel the snow out of the driveway.
Yep.
To make it. But
you were there during, I think, there was the ice storm couple years. I remember there was no power for like 2 weeks out there, I recall.
Power lines coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some crazy times. That that is the weather there was. Ohio, apart from West Side and Ohio State, there's really not much else there. And some great people, but other than that, we train in the morning. We train for a couple hours and sometimes longer, depending if people were visiting and stuff. Go home, work during the day, come back in the afternoon and do a small workout, and then go home and work in the evening. So, the cool thing was as I transitioned from running a health club to running more of a virtual business, where we were consulting and stuff and running events, but the day-to-day business was being able to run from my house. It gave me the freedom to really be a professional powerlifter, right? And a lot of people, at Westside, the morning crew has always been the crew you got to be in. But, that doesn't really work for most people with regular jobs. If you have a regular job, you really can't. So what you've got is a group of people in all walks of life, but they basically built their life around that training schedule. So you got people working swing shifts purely so they can train in the morning, people taking part-time jobs so they can train in the morning. And that's kind of, that was kind of the dedication that every athlete who was there had put in. It was like, they had basically structured their life around that morning training. And, back in the day, you had to be invited into the morning crew. Like, you came in at Westside, you were in the night crew first, and then it was kind of like you were invited in. And slowly over time, the night crew developed into its own, like, elite group, with Dave Hoff and that. But, it was interesting. Louie always said that, potential it wasn't what people could do in the gym, it was what was between the ears. And when you got a group of people who are that dedicated and you're in an environment like that, like the person who's number two is just as much as the part of your success as the other person. So that was cool. And then getting to work from home just gave me that freedom to be able to learn and work and put it in and get done what I needed to get done when I needed to get it done. But it beat the heck out of having to go to an office or do anything like that. I was able to kind of set my own schedule, and that really was the best thing ever for me, because now I could train when I wanted to train, recover and make food. And
yep.
I ate fast food most of the time back when I was powerlifting, but it was a great lifestyle to be able to do that. And that's kind of why I was drawn to it in the first place. I know a lot of the back. I know, a lot about how you transitioned in and out of powerlifting, but I want to kind of give all the people listening who don't know you, I want to share a lot of your big lessons. So what are some of the big training and even life lessons you took away from spend a lot of time at Westside, being around Louie, and you even were helping Louie with trying to help him with some of the business stuff at the time, and it's interesting how he was able to, create a business around his stuff. And Louie, let's all get this out in the open, does not attend marketing seminars. He really created this phenomenon through the best results. Bottom line, I always tell people, when a coach tells me, yeah, we also squat and bench just like you, I go, that's right, everybody squats and benches. But I go, but it's the recipe. I go, that's why there's only one strongest gym in the world. It's Westside Barbell. That's why this pizzeria is better than that pizzeria. They all got, the dough, the tomato sauce, and the cheese. But it's the chef. It's the recipe. Or every football team's got a football, but this football team is the one always winning championships. So it's not the equipment. It's what's actually happening and how it's done. So talk to everybody listening about the big takeaways of training, as well as some life and maybe even business lessons during your time at Westside, and then we'll transition into where you are now. Yeah, so I think the biggest lesson for me from powerlifting and Westside is just was the end of 4 years, the last 4 years of my career. But I think the biggest lesson is consistency. One of the things that most people don't realize is consistency is the name of the game, and there's no big home runs, right? It's your batting bases pretty much every time you're training, and you're stacking on top of each other consistently. And when you do that, when you're in the gym, you don't miss workouts, right? Like, and this is, a lot of people listening to this, like, will not take this to heart. But, like, I missed, like, birthday parties and weddings, and, like, early in the career, I was training at night before I moved to Westside. And there was lots of, like, get-togethers and social engagements and things that it was like, sorry, I got to train. You know, sorry, I'm competing. And, you know, those sacrifices may, to some, seem like a lot, but it's like I don't have another chance. I might not have another chance to compete in the World Championships.
Window of opportunity.
Like, you're going to have a birthday every year. And, no, like, I love you, and, you know, I love your brother, or whatever, you know, whatever it was. But these were the sacrifices I made, and they're showing up every day and putting in the work. And that is something that people just don't do enough. What they do, especially in training, they work really hard. You know, they do a 12-week program, and then they need some time off, and then they jump to the next program, and then they need some time off.
Yep.
And they wonder why they never make progress, and they literally, you know, they make a little bit of progress, and then they drop back down. They make a little bit of progress, and they drop back down. And then when you measure that out over the year, they basically start and finish around the same, or maybe they had a little improvement. You look at what I was doing, and you look at the Westside system. You know, I'm squatting every Friday for 52 weeks of the year, pretty much. And, you know, so if I do that every week, right, I got 52 squat sessions in, right? Well, if you're you know, training and taking time off, what's the difference? So let's say over the year you only squat 40 weeks out of the year, and I squatted 52. Well, in 2 years I've done 104, and you've done 80.
Yes.
So in 3 years, 4 years, I've got a whole year advancement on you, and that's what people didn't see. They saw me rising up, but they didn't realize that the reason I was able to do that is because the consistency of training stacked upon one, you just make continual progress. And, you know, I was very fortunate. I stayed injury-free, which is, you know, what most people, you know, one of the, you know, Westside best principles from Louie is that, like, it's not about hitting a max PR all time. It's about doing the best you can do today. Like, that's the max effort. It's not, yeah, you want to beat your personal records, but it's about max effort is the max effort for the day, and leave something in the tank, you know, like, don't miss, and that helps you stay injury free. And then, of course, the structure of the system as well, with the singles and stuff like that, it was all designed to keep you to be injury free. And I'm very fortunate to have guys like Dave Tate and Wendler and all these other guys that went through Westside before me.
Yep.
That kind of were experiments, right? And
True.
There was injuries that happened and things like that as they pushed the boundaries. And then I got kind of the perfect recipe almost. And that's really kind of that consistency mixed with a plan, you know. And the great thing that I learned is the plan needs to be flexible. It's concepts and theories, right? Same in business, it's fundamentals, but execution, that's going to vary, and how you do it, like, that's personal. And that was how we trained. You know, we showed up max effort day. What do you guys feel like doing? You know, who's, you know, oh, you know, I don't want to deadlift, my back's blown up. All right, well, what if we do some Zercher squats? And, like, these are the things, like, we'd have these conversations, but we knew today was max effort work.
Yep.
Right? And obviously, if a coach you're programming for groups, like, it's difficult to do that. But, like, individually, like, that's really, like, you have the flexibility there, and you got to be flexible. So the consistency, and then the flexibility, and the understanding that it's not always going to go your way. You know, you fail more often than you succeed, but when you do succeed, it's usually larger than you know, it makes up for all those losses. And so you have to just be willing to go through the work. So that was huge. And then environment, I mentioned it earlier, but the people you surround yourself with, the biggest, you know, thing, you know, I got from the beginning when I was training with Brent and those guys, and then when I was at Westside, was I got to train with people who were stronger than me. It was like a blueprint. Like, oh, these guys are doing tricep extensions with 110-pound dumbbells. I'm struggling with 60s. Clearly, that's my weakness. I need to get that stronger. And, you know, I think that's one of the biggest learning things. Like, you know, we can do assessments and we can do stuff like that, but when you see a guy just pounding out, you know, massive amounts of weights on an exercise, and you're 200 pounds off, and then you correlate that to the main lifts, and you're like, you know, I'm 100 pounds off there. Like, now I know what I need to train, because I can do this this exercise the same as him and this exercise the same, but I can't do this one.
Yeah.
This is where I need to focus and it was always the stuff you hated freaking doing, you know? It was always the stuff you looked at.
The most successful people are great at doing the stuff that they know they may not love it or even like it. Like you just said earlier with business, you don't like to do the taxes, you got to get it done. I always tell gym owners, I go, you think I like doing all the social media and all the blogging 3 hours a day, or even, dialing in my advertising? I go, that's not fun for me, working the Facebook ads. What's fun for me is being on that ground floor coaching the athletes. But if I don't dial in advertising, then that gym is not pumping. Or smaller details like you were in the recent episode of Barbell Business saying location. I would say, man, if I was smarter and more patient and picked a better location that had a lot of foot traffic in the right, the strategic area, it would require less online marketing, less time on that. So you're always adjusting. I think that's what people don't do. With training, the shit's not working, and they'll kind of like blame or complain and, make an excuse about it. So, you guys would be like, well, hey, my back is bothering me. Let's do this. Or there was another guy. You guys were always just educating and pushing one another. It's like, and you're talking about there's more downsides. There's more like quote unquote failures than there are success stories. Like there was a lot of probably shit that went wrong or that you had to go through before you won a world championship.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think it was 2 years before I broke the record.
Yep.
The world record. I thought I was strong enough to break the world record. And I remember having a conversation with Johnny Thompson, who was chasing the 3,000. And he was like, I know I'm strong enough. And it just wasn't happening. And I felt the exact same thing, And so, I would make progress on my total, but it was always under what I thought I should be doing. And then finally, it all comes together. And I think I out-totaled my best total by 100 pounds or something when I broke the record. I think my best total was 2680 or something like that, or 2685. And then all of a sudden I totaled, 2825. And people were like, holy crap.
It's insane.
What did you do? And it's like, no, I haven't performed the way I thought I should perform. Something's always off. And I think that's, you look at this. I can't remember who did this. I just see a video about overnight success, and they were saying what they don't see is the 100 or 1,000 videos that came before.
Yes.
They talk about YouTube stars, but they don't see all the work that was put in before. They just see the one video that went viral.
Yeah.
And they don't see, the years that someone's been putting in. And I think that I know Elliot, our buddy Elliot Holst, it was like that, and he was putting in work, and then I was at a marketing conference with him. And John DeCane from Dragon Door and Elliot gave a presentation, and he just showed his progress. It was like this.
Yep.
Slowly, and then all of a sudden it was like boom.
It
was vertical, and that was the same in the gym, man. And I hear it all the time. People are like, "Oh, I'm stuck." Before I moved to Westside, I think we had this conversation. I was really grinding for about a year and not making much progress. And it was like, okay, I'm either not going to continue on or I'm going to do what it takes. And that was that commitment to go move and be in that environment, And
you were training out of your garage on the weekdays. I remember that's what the conversation was. You're like, man, during the week I'm training out of my garage alone. But then when I go to Westside, and that's when we're kind of you always need somebody that just calls you out and is like, dude, now is the window of opportunity. You don't have kids, and that stuff never really hit me about that window of opportunity until I'm 40 years old now. So I think I was 35 when I held the Underground Strength Conference, and the Ultimate Warrior spoke, and he was early 50s. It was 2 years before he passed away, and he said to everybody, he goes, pay attention to how your body feels, because there are times in your life when you can push and pull all these heavy weights and just being intense. He's like, do it now. Do it now. If you want to be the world's best bodybuilder, powerlifter, strongman, do it now. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then the next year, my ankle was all messed up. It took 2 years. And anytime somebody was like, hey, enter this strongman contest or enter this, I'm like, dude, I can't even jog. And it was like, you have that window of opportunity, and they do not come back unless you believe in the afterlife.
I totally agree. There's some anomalies in the sport, guys like Chuck Vogel and stuff like that. But for every Chuck, there's a guy just like me who got to the top, and then you don't hear of him. And most of those guys, unfortunately, get injured or go backwards. And I just kind of made the decision that enough's enough. I gotta get my health back in shape. I'm tired of pushing. Walking that fine line. But it is a window of opportunity, and I think that's with everything. And I think that there comes, like, you might miss a window, but there's another window of opportunity that comes up. It might be in a different area and stuff like that. But most people, and I guess it's just kind of tradition, but most people, like, they grew up in a certain area, and like even when I go home, like most of my friends and my brother and my sister, everyone lives in the same proximity as we did growing up. There's comfort with that proximity.
Yep.
And being comfortable, being uncomfortable is really what you've got to learn. If it doesn't scare you, if you're not, if you're not fearing going into it, if it doesn't challenge your who you are today, then you're probably not doing enough. And the reason is like, it's not about who you are, it's about who you have to become. And you have to be willing to step into that person. And it is scary. You're going to change. And, you leave. You don't connect with people the way you used to connect with as you grow, because they're not on that level. They
grow apart.
And so people get scared of that, so they stay stuck. But the thing is, if you have any ounce to get out of that never goes away, and it just eats you up, and obviously I'm a little younger, but like you see these quarterbacks, right? Monday morning quarterbacks, or where they're sitting there and they're just so bitter and miserable, and they want to bitch and moan about whatever they can.
Yep.
Because they know they were supposed to do something, they never did it. So then that seed eventually goes black, so almost, and they have that that negativity.
And it's never.
I can't be around those people.
Right. They eat you up.
From a place that they knew they should be doing something different, they never did, and now it's projection to the world. And so I just tell people all the time, man, like, just do it,
And it's never perfect.
Yeah, I want to move. Okay, then move. Oh yeah, but what about this? I'm like, you will figure it out. That's the beautiful.
If you're tough, you need. There's an element of mental toughness and mental fortitude and the ability to grit out the tough times. I had this conversation with Tate Fletcher and Keith Jardine. Tate was from some town in Michigan, and he said everybody's like, you just never get out of here. You'll never get out of Michigan. And he's like, you can't listen to those people. And, people tend to harp on stuff. I was at a wrestling tournament recently, and this one coach was like, where's the other ref? There's too many kids here. I thought this was going to be better organized. And I just had to, at first I'm saying, I'm like, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to work. And then eventually I just had to walk away because he couldn't say, yeah, we'll make this work. And that's what I didn't want to start getting into it. I want, it's going to work. It's okay. It's a little hectic now, but that's the real world. It's going to work. And, it's like you're saying, you got to be okay with the imperfections. When you, I remember when you left Westside and moved to California, you always told me that Louie had that conversation with you and would kind of sit down with the guys and tell everybody basically most people are going to break mentally before physically. Like he told you, I believe if you kept going, you could have hit that 3,000 pound mark. And you told me, you're like, I was done looking in the mirror. I didn't like who I saw. You couldn't. I remember when you came out here to do a seminar, it's like, you're like, if I eat too much, it speeds up my metabolism. So I actually can't eat that much. And I heard it in your voice, but I also knew that you were like, this is what I got to do now. And I knew change was coming. So Louie tries to kind of educate you guys on that and
Yeah, that's the greatest. Louie's been, most people don't, he's not really he doesn't like to consider himself as a coach. He's not in the gym, personal training. He's a teammate. But the one thing is if you're around Louie long enough, his philosophy of life is pretty deep. And he two things he taught me He always told me just do what makes you happy. If you're not happy, then you have the power to change it. And I don't think he ever thought that I would use that line against him when I decided to retire. I told him I'm not happy. I need to make changes, but he understood.
Yeah,
he understood. And then the second lesson was that like you said, most people break mentally before they break physically. And the day I knew that it was time to step down was I just broke the world record. I just squatted 1205, biggest squat I'd done. And we went to breakfast the next day, and my body weight was around 320. I had sleep apnea, and really heavy breathing, and was just miserable pretty much outside of lifting a lot of weight. And Louie goes to me, I think if you push your body weight to 350, you'll total 3,000 in the next couple
350, holy shit.
I just went to myself, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And I knew that my mental, because throughout my career, I'd said stuff to Louie. I'd said, hey, I'm going to be a top 10 bencher. And he looked at me and goes, you'll never be on the top 10 list, right? And then I would do it. And I didn't matter what he said. And Louie knows how to motivate you. So, I get motivated. Someone says I can't do something, that motivates me. He knows that. But, I always sounded like the crazy one to people, right? I always sounded like the crazy one. But then I backed it up, right? And kind of like Conor McGregor, he says stuff and people are like, and then he just does exactly what he says, so you can't question it, right? And then all of a sudden, Louie's saying something to me, and I'm like, you're crazy. There is no way I'll do that. And that's when I knew mentally I'd made that switch. And, the writing was on the wall. If I continued, I've seen guys, do that, go past their prime, push, not have the mental edge, and I just didn't want to be one of those guys, and whether I had to leave Westside to do that, no, I believed I did. I had to get at, because I felt like if I stayed there, I would have ended up going back. Like I would have lost some weight for a little bit, and then I would have get caught back up in that. Because even now, I love powerlifting, and when I watch it, there's a little piece of me that goes, well, maybe I should get back into it. And I did a meet, last year in March and tore my hamstring because, my body just is not what it was.
Yeah.
I have more injuries since retiring from powerlifting than I did when I was lifting lighter weights, and, maybe it's because I test to try new things now, but, like you said, you got the window of opportunity, and the greatest gift that Louie gave me was just understanding the mind and understanding that potential was between the ears and understanding that, happiness was what was most important, and you got to do what it takes to be happy, and that sometimes it upsets people, and that was actually probably the hardest conversation I ever had in my life, was at breakfast with Louie when I had to tell him that I was going to be leaving. And
what did he say?
He said he thanked me. He was really sad, but he thanked me, and only a couple of people have done it the right way and left that way. Most people are it's a tough conversation to have, so they kind of just disappear,
right?
And show back up a couple of years later and build a friendship again with Louie, but he never understands why they left. So I was able to have that opportunity to explain to him, and even then, a couple months later, I went back to help with the team, and we had another conversation. I got to really explain what was going on with me at the time, and he understood. He totally understood, and I think that he didn't really want me to, but he just knew that he could see that he's done. And I have a thought process that you shouldn't be at Westside unless you are gunning to be one of the best, right?
Right.
The environment there, it's difficult to be around if you're just working out. So that was kind of played in my decision, and then I also knew I really wanted to get my health in check, and California is a great place to do that, and changing the environment again would kind of create a new a new place for me to transform, and so that kind of was the transition. So I still look at Louie as one of probably the biggest influences in my life beyond just the lifting.
I remember when you went to California and you had a photo of you or walking on the beach, and it changed you, and you went right into kind of another mode of, you still trained, you began pushing, your business expertise as a consultant, and you worked with a lot of really the most successful internet marketers out there. What's some of the even bad stuff, good, bad lessons that you've learned through all your experiences of business? And there's certainly been an evolution in how you and I have seen businesses, the way they grow, the way they run, the way they're marketed. You know, you and I were friends before YouTube was out. You know, like it was just a different way to grow your business, but maybe give some lessons that you think are important, that are good, and even some bad stuff, some mistakes that you think, you know, you want to share with people so they don't go through that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the biggest thing I've seen in business is that like people, like they got to know themselves before anything, right? And a lot of people don't know who they are. They don't know what they stand for. Dave Tate and I talked a lot about this when we interviewed him. It's like core values. Like, what are your core values? You know, what is that you stand for? And if you go into business without that, like, and you're chasing the money or you're following the money. I remember, so when I got out of college, you know, I had a little strength and conditioning facility, and I remember listening and hearing the money was in the fat loss. You know, and you know, I never trained any fat loss peeps, so you know, I bought Alan Cosgrove's Afterburn 1 and Afterburn 2, and that was the training program I was going to put people through, and then you know, I sold people into this fat loss thing, and you know, I genuinely liked my clients, but I genuinely hated what I was doing because I wasn't training athletes. I was training general pop with weight loss, which was not mind-numbing for me. It didn't light me up. I didn't get excited. And I see that all the time in the industry, and especially in the internet marketing industry, which really is just online digital marketing. Is really not an industry. It was kind of was made out of thin air back in you know the 2006 2007. But in reality, like the people who do really well, it's because they're actually doing what they actually love, and they're working with the people they love to work with. And the people who struggle, they're the people who are picking the niche, right?
True.
It's like the riches are in the niches, and it's like, well, that's true if the niche happens to be something you're interested in, right? You can't, and what happens is if people build a business doing something they don't generally like, they burn it down, and then they'll jump to the next one.
Bless you. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's like somebody living in this small town. I'm living near a downtown, and I see a lot of just people who I think might have some extra cash flow. They go and open up like a little store that I see it open up, and I'm like, man, I can't imagine they're passionate about that. But then I go, and where I buy the majority of my steaks from, this guy, the name of the place is called Mr. Prime, Old Time Butcher. And you go in, and he's so passionate about everything. He's got like his old, equipment and the old meat cutting table from when he was a kid. His father was a butcher. He started working for his dad at age, I think, 12 or 13. And so when you go in there, there's a story behind why this steak is called this steak. And I think people go there, it's premium priced, but he's so passionate about it that you're like, holy crap, it's like so great to be around Nick. It's like the experience of buying the steak, and it's great. And I think all that flows because he's so passionate about steak. But I've seen businesses around him, strange like stuff, like go in and out of business. And I remember saying, like, I can't imagine anybody be passionate about selling used clothing and used toys. They just tried to make money with something. But you're right. Like, if you don't have the heart, like, I've tried many times on and off to do an adult program, but I don't have the heart to work with somebody is not training for a gold medal. That's just what I want to do, and it will not work. And I'm a smart businessman, but I just can't put my heart into the business smarts. And this is the truth, man.
And you can make money. This is the big thing. So you can make money doing something you don't love, and you can be successful in what most people think of success with business, and that's cash flow. But Dax Moy, I was just hanging out with him last week, and he said something. It's like, you got to look at all the ways you're being paid. Like money is just one exchange of value, right? And so you've got to look at the other ways, and true wealth is about how does that. So making more money, like doing something you don't like you're actually sacrificing time. So the value of your time is now being traded. And so if you didn't do that, let's say you lost a significant amount of income, but you bought back all that time, that freedom that you're working so hard for. And he was talking about the value exchange between the people you work for. It's not just you providing them with the service and changing their life. What are they providing you? You know, are they giving you an opportunity to learn, or are they taking away from that and you're shrinking because you're doing something that you're not passionate about? And you know, you still, even if you do what you love, you're still going to have to go through shit, right? That's the big, everyone thinks like, oh, it's easy if I do what I love. And no, it's still going to be work. You're still going to have to be
tough. Yeah.
You're still going to have to grind and learn everything, and you're still going to have to push. But if you build a business like that from the beginning, you know, you're not going to get to a point where you're like, oh, you know, okay, what do I want to do now? And I've seen that. You know, I'm in a lot of different groups, and I know a lot of people who build a successful business, you know, and then they're like, well, do I sell it? Do I hire a CEO because I hate this and I don't want to do this anymore? And they're lost. You know, they're lost for years trying to figure it out. And, you know, I think that's one of the things. It's like, you got to start to know yourself first. And once you know yourself, then it's like, okay, what's my creation? What do I put into the world? And who does that serve? And when you know those things, you know, that's what makes the difference, because now you can just target those people. And I think that, you know, we've known each other for a long time. And I think that's something from the very beginning. And I know you've tried different things and that, but from the very beginning, you've been pretty clear on what you teach. You know, the underground strength methods you've stuck with it from the very beginning, and you've carried it through, whether it's online, whether it's offline, whether it is with adults, even though it's not necessarily age population. The training style does the same. You haven't fleeted from those beliefs because, you know, like when a new tool came out, you weren't like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. You're like, okay, I can see how we use this, but it's still, you know, we can still pick up a rock outside and have the same training effect. We don't need this fancy tool, right? And that's something I think that, like, too many people, they don't stand for anything. You know, and if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. And if you're in the middle, you're dead. It's the
worst. Yes, that is the worst place to stand, is that in the middle, because you think like you're widely accepted or you're safer there. But I think people could see a mile away, like, you know, that's not where you need to be. And
if you're not committed, like if you're not all in, if you're not committed, then why would anyone else go all in and be committed with you?
You will attract, you will attract the half-ass, the half-hearted people, without a doubt. You will not attract the right people. So that's so true. So that is kind of, you know, the little bit of, I guess, the mistakes that we would share. Any, like, really important, what's like just a great, I don't know how I could word this, but, you know, seeing you going from England to Idaho to Louisville to Ohio to California, you know, you've been around a lot of different places. You've put in the work and invested not just the time but the money. You know, you just said, like, when I was training fat loss people, I bought these fat loss programs. So you're a investor. You invest in yourself. What's, like, final piece of advice? Like, if you're standing in front of, like, a big crowd of people and they're like, look, man, we need advice on living a strong life, what are you going to tell us?
I think the biggest thing is to step into your fears. And, you know, most people don't understand how that holds them back. Dan Sullivan teaches something I think is important. It's like, you know, first you have to make the commitment. And then you have to, you know, have the courage, right? So saying you're going to do something is fine, but you have to have the courage to actually do what it's going to take. So if you have a fear of anything, then go face the biggest fear you have. You know, if you're scared of heights, go jump out of a plane. If you're scared of the water, like, go learn how to dive, deep sea dive. If you're scared of, you know, spiders, you know, go to the zoo and hold the biggest tarantula, or snakes, pythons. Like, go do those things, because those are your biggest fears. You face that, you know, doing an extra set in the gym, or, you know, showing up to work an hour early becomes easy. Like, none of this stuff, it becomes, you know, and the more comfortable you get being uncomfortable, putting yourself in those situations, when you get those fears, you acknowledge them and then you pound through them. And what's most important to realize is those fears never go away. You know, it doesn't matter
True.
what level you're at. Like, I still get scared before I step on stage. You know, before we did this podcast, I'm like, oh, you know, I wonder what he's going to ask me. I hope
Sweating.
right. And we've been friends forever. And I think that, you know, people just need to realize that it's like, it's not the fear that stops you. It's the courage to step through. And so I'm a huge, you know, I've tried to think of like, what's the best advice? But I honestly think if people get used to facing their fears and being uncomfortable, all of the other stuff falls into place. Because once you have the courage, you'll go seek the answers, and you'll everything will fall. The cards will fall. You'll invest, because when you're scared of investing, because you're like, well, I only have this much money. You're like, you know what? No. Like, this is the feeling I should have. This means I should invest. You know, when you're scared to trust, you know, in taking a certain path and giving up, you know, this business to go into what you believe you're supposed to do, you'll do it. And so it all starts with that fear and that facing that fear. And, you know, like I said, I would say, like, right now, if someone's listening, the easiest thing you can do is, what's my biggest fear? Okay, go book something that challenges that. And then the other stuff in the gym and business and relationships, all of that kind of, now you're like, wow, you know, I'm good to go.
Yes. I'm going to finish with this. Like you saying, face your fears. There's going to be people out there saying, what if I don't make it? What if I can't? And what's so interesting is, like, my wife's always like, well, we might move. We might do this. There's all these things. She's like, you know, what will you do? Will you open another gym? I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I will not fucking lose. Like, that's where, like, you get to that point where you've faced your fears so many times that you become kind of this Spartan that will, like, I don't care. You can burn my gym down and I will be running my business at the park next door. You know, you can take everything away from me and I will rebuild it stronger and better. And that came through exercising that mental muscle, like you said, of facing fears. But until you don't face fears, you don't believe, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. Did you start your podcast? I know you mentioned on Facebook that you are going to start a podcast. Is that out yet?
No, not yet.
Soon.
The best place for people to go is just ajroberts.com.
Perfect.
I'm involved in a lot of different businesses.
Yep.
I have Barbell Business, which is a business podcast.
Love it.
Valkyrie Athletics, which is a sports performance nutrition company, and we got some supplement stuff coming. So just AJ Roberts is probably the best, and that's the same on different social medias too. So
cool. And what I'll do, those of you guys listening instead of watching on YouTube, for this podcast at zachevanesh.com or undergroundstrength.tv, as AJ's online stuff pops up, I'll go and make sure I update links for you guys listening. AJ's been a great friend for a super long time, and that's why we probably did a lot of business stuff together, because it's always fun to run a business with people that you really love hanging around. Awesome, smart guy, training guy, and I'll link you up on Twitter, and you got the Facebook fan page. You're sending out daily email, so there's going to be a lot of ways. We're going to link all that up. Thanks to everybody for listening. Make sure you head on over to iTunes, hook us up with a 5-star rating, and click the links if you're on YouTube. Sign up for all that stuff. Going to keep kicking ass. It's been a pleasure. Take care, guys. Talk to you soon.